She slapped the billionaire, so he pulled her closer and kissed her instead. Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter Stories. I just want to take a moment to thank you all for the love and support you've shown me. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. You're the heart of this community, and I'm so grateful for you all. Today, I need your prayers for Binta, who isn't feeling well. Please send her your love and strength. She needs it right now. Things have been a bit overwhelming lately. James is retiring, and I'm managing everything on my own. I lost the 20,000 subscriber challenge, and it feels like we're not rising as we promised, but instead, we're going down. But I'm not giving up. I believe in us, and I know with your support we can turn things around. If you're with me, if you believe in what we're doing here, comment down below and say, "I am Mr. Peter." Let's show the world that we rise together. Please like, comment, and share this video. Let's spread love, hope, and positivity. Much love always, Mr. Peter. The Waverly Foundation's annual charity art auction glittered with San Francisco's elite, their wealth displayed in designer gowns and rare vintage watches. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light across the gallery, where paintings worth millions hung like trophies to be claimed. Makeda Sterling moved through the crowd with purpose, her emerald gown flowing behind her like liquid jade, a stark contrast against her rich mahogany skin. Tonight wasn't about socializing for Makeda. Her focus remained fixed on a single painting, Amara, Klein's Awakening Dawn, a breathtaking canvas of vibrant colors that seemed to capture the very essence of rebirth. As the curator of the Rising Prism Gallery, acquiring this piece would put her space on the map, attracting the kind of attention that could elevate her years of hard work into something transcendent. 2 minutes until bidding starts on the Klein, whispered Zuri, her assistant and closest friend, appearing at her elbow with 2 champagne flutes. Makeda took one, her dark eyes never leaving the painting. "It has to be ours, Zuri. I've never been more certain of anything." "Just stick to the budget we discussed," Zuri cautioned. "Remember what happened with the Donovan sculpture." Makeda winced at the memory. She'd gotten carried away before, her passion overriding her business sense. Not tonight. Tonight she would be calculated, disciplined. Then she saw him. Tavian. Frost stood before her target painting, his tall frame wrapped in a perfectly tailored black suit that made his pale skin and shock of golden hair stand out like a flame in darkness. Even from behind, his presence commanded attention, something about the set of his broad shoulders and the way others instinctively made space around him. "You've got to be kidding me," Makeda muttered, recognizing the notorious billionaire. Tech mogul whose face graced business magazines monthly. His reputation preceded him, collector of beautiful things, whether art, cars, or women, none kept for long before he moved to the next acquisition. "Trouble," Zuri breathed, following her gaze. "If he wants the Klein, he won't get it," Makeda said with more conviction than she felt, moving toward the painting as the auctioneer called for everyone to take their seats. The bidding began at $100,000, quickly escalating as numbered. Paddles rose throughout the room. Makeda entered at $175,000, just below her maximum budget. Her heart raced with each increase, her paddle rising with determination until $225,000, her absolute limit. That's when paddle number 27 rose. Tavian Frost, his glacial blue eyes focused on the auctioneer, his expression revealing nothing, as he casually raised the bid to $250,000. Makeda felt her chest tighten. She couldn't go higher. She couldn't. Her paddle shot up. $275,000. She called, ignoring Zuri's gasp beside her. Frost turned then, noticing her for the first time. Their eyes locked across the room, her defiance meeting his curiosity. A slight smile touched his lips before he raised his paddle again. $300,000. The room buzzed with excitement at the unexpected bidding war. Makeda knew she should stop, that her gallery couldn't absorb this financial risk, but something in his confident smirk ignited a fire in her blood. $325,000, she counted, her voice steady despite the recklessness of her actions. His smile widened. $400,000. The jump in price elicited audible gasps. Makeda's hand tightened around her paddle, but Zuri placed a restraining hand on her wrist. Reality crashed back. She couldn't do this. With painful restraint, she lowered her paddle as the auctioneer's gavel fell with finality. Sold to Mr. Tavian Frost for $400,000. Applause erupted while disappointment hollowed Makeda's chest. As the crowd dispersed for intermission, she found herself moving toward the painting, toward him, drawn by a mixture of frustration and inexplicable magnetism. He stood examining his new acquisition, hands clasped behind his back. "Do you even know what you've just bought?" Makeda demanded, propriety forgotten in her passionate state. Frost turned slowly, and Makeda felt the full impact of his attention, those startling blue eyes assessing her with unexpected intensity, as if she were suddenly the most interesting. Piece in the gallery. Amara Klein's Awakening Dawn, oil on canvas, completed 3 months before her death. His deep voice carried no defensiveness, only calm certainty. Her finest work, representing rebirth after devastating loss. Makeda blinked, thrown off balance. "You actually know her work." "I know art, Ms. Sterling." Makeda Sterling. "Ah, and from Prism Gallery." Recognition flashed in his eyes. "Your curation of emerging black artists has been impressive." The compliment, delivered with what seemed like genuine appreciation, momentarily disarmed her. "Then you know this piece belongs in a gallery where people can experience it, not locked away in some billionaire's private collection," she recovered, passion returning to her voice. Something flickered across his face. Amusement mixed with another emotion she couldn't identify. "You assume much about my intentions." "I assume what your type always does. Acquire beautiful things as status symbols without appreciating their true value." Instead of offense, curiosity brightened his gaze. "My type? Wealthy collectors who see art as investment properties rather than cultural treasures," she clarified, stepping closer, the scent of his expensive cologne invading her senses. "That painting represents Klein's soul laid bare, her pain transformed into something transcendent. It deserves to be seen, and you believe I'm incapable of understanding that transformation, that pain?" The playfulness vanished from his expression, replaced by something darker, more intense. "I believe you bought it because I wanted it," Makeda said, the words escaping before she could censor them. His laugh was unexpected, rich and genuine. "You flatter yourself, Miss Sterling, though I admit watching you bid was enthralling." Heat rushed to her cheeks. "Enthralling? You toyed with me. You could have outbid me from the start." Where would be the pleasure in that? The words carried a current of meaning that seemed to charge the air between them. Fury and something more dangerous flooded her veins. "This isn't a game, Mr. Frost, isn't it?" He stepped closer, the space between them shrinking to nothing. "The passion in your eyes when you looked at that painting, I wonder what else ignites such fire in you." The audacity, the arrogance of his statement sent her hand flying before conscious thought could intervene. The crack of her palm against his cheek echoed in the suddenly silent gallery. Makeda froze, shocked by her own action, by the red mark blooming on his aristocratic cheekbone. She expected security, expected outrage. Instead, Tavian Frost's eyes darkened like the sky before. A storm. His hand captured her wrist in a gentle but unbreakable grip, drawing her toward him with inexorable force. Her free hand pressed against his chest in resistance, feeling the thundering beat of his heart beneath expensive fabric. "You're the first woman who's ever slapped me," he murmured, voice dropped to a dangerous timbre that sent shivers racing along her spine. "You deserved it," she whispered, suddenly breathless. "Perhaps," he agreed, his gaze dropping to her lips. "And perhaps I deserve this too." In one fluid motion, he pulled her against him, his mouth claiming hers with devastating precision. Makeda's gasp of surprise melted into something else entirely as electricity surged between them. His kiss was confident, commanding, yet somehow questioning, offering her the chance to pull away. She should pull away. She should slap him again. Instead, her fingers curled into the fabric of his jacket, her body arching into his as the kiss deepened, becoming something wild and consuming. The world disappeared. The gallery, the onlookers, everything but the taste and feel of him. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, reality rushed back with humiliating force. Dozens of eyes watched them, phones capturing the moment that would undoubtedly circulate through social media within minutes. Horror replaced desire. What had she done? Her reputation, her gallery's reputation. "Let go of me," she demanded, voice shaking. To her surprise, he immediately released her. "Makeda, no." She stepped back, fingers touching her still tingling lips. "Stay away from me." Before he could respond, she turned and fled through the crowd, the taste of him still lingering on her lips, the sensation of his touch branded into her skin. Behind her, Tavian Frost watched her retreat, the hint of a smile playing at the corner of his mouth, the sting on his cheek forgotten as he touched his own lips in wonder. The hunt had just begun. Chapter 2. Unexpected Gifts. Makeda fumbled with her keys, exhaustion weighing on her after a sleepless night. That kiss had haunted her, replaying in vivid detail every time she closed her eyes. The way his arms had felt around her, the intoxicating scent of him, the shocking heat that had flared between them. It was infuriating how her body betrayed her whenever she thought of it. "Stupid, reckless billionaire," she muttered, finally pushing open the gallery door and flipping on the lights. She'd spent hours crafting careful emails to her investors, explaining why she'd failed to acquire the Klein painting, dancing around the humiliating scene that followed. The soft ping of her phone indicated another notification, likely another. Tagged photo from the gala. She'd turned off social media alerts after the third gossip site had posted the picture of her and Frost locked in that scorching kiss. The headlines had been merciless. Frost's latest acquisition and Billionaire's new art expert. Dropping her bag on the reception desk, Makeda froze. Something was different. Her gaze swept across the gallery space, locking on the far wall, where a new painting hung, its vibrant colors unmistakable even from across the room. "Impossible," she whispered, moving forward as if in a trance. There it was. Awakening Dawn. The painting she'd lost at auction, now displayed perfectly on her gallery wall, bathed in morning light streaming through the skylight. A cream-colored envelope was pinned beside it. With trembling fingers, Makeda opened it, revealing an elegant card with handwritten text, a 3-month loan to Prism Gallery. "Perhaps we both got what we wanted after all." Tiff. Her emotions warred between outrage at his presumption and undeniable elation at having the Klein displayed in her gallery, even temporarily. The sheer audacity of the man, to purchase the painting for an outrageous sum, only to loan it to her immediately after. What game was he playing? Her phone rang, Zuri's name flashing on the screen. "Have you seen it?" Zuri demanded without preamble. "I'm looking at it right now," Makeda replied, still staring at the painting. "How did he even get in?" Apparently his assistant arranged everything with Marco last night. The security footage shows them installing it at dawn. Zuri paused. "What are you going to do?" Return it, Makeda said firmly, even as her heart protested. I won't be in his debt. Are you insane? Do you know what this painting will do for the gallery's profile? 3 months of awakening dawn could transform Prism's entire future. Makeda pressed her fingers to her temples. It's not about the painting. It's about him thinking he can kiss you senseless and then give you exactly what you wanted, Zuri interrupted. What a monster. You don't understand. Men like Tavian Frost don't do favors without expecting something in return. Then find out what he wants, Zuri suggested. His penthouse address is in the visitor log Marco signed. Return the key they left. 3 hours later, Makeda stood before the private elevator to Tavian Frost's penthouse, the small brass key clutched in her hand. She'd changed into a simple red dress that hugged her curves. Not for him, she told herself, but because she refused to look anything but confident when rejecting his gift. The elevator opened directly into his penthouse, revealing a vast space bathed in the golden light of sunset. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking panorama of San Francisco Bay, the water shimmering like scattered diamonds. The decor surprised her. Warm woods and rich fabrics in deep blues and burgundies, rather than the cold minimalism she'd expected. More surprising were the walls. Every available space displayed art, not the predictable blue-chip investment pieces, but bold, evocative works from diverse artists spanning different eras and styles. Her expert eye recognized several pieces from rising stars she herself had championed. He actually has taste, she murmured, moving deeper into the space. A haunting melody drew her attention, piano notes floating through the air with aching tenderness. Following the sound, she found Tavian seated at a grand piano in a room illuminated only by the dying sunlight. His back to her, his fingers moved across the keys with surprising skill, coaxing a melancholy nocturne that spoke of loneliness and longing. Without his calculated charm and arrogance, he seemed different, vulnerable even. His broad shoulders were slightly hunched, his posture intimate with the instrument, as though sharing secrets. The music flowed from him with raw emotion that caught her unprepared. She must have made some small sound, for the music suddenly stopped. Tavian turned, surprise momentarily breaking through his usually controlled expression. "Miss Sterling," he said, rising from the bench. He wore simple black pants and a white shirt with rolled sleeves, a far cry from his tailored suits. "I wasn't expecting visitors, clearly," she replied, lifting her chin. "Your security let me up when I showed them the key your people left at my gallery." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "Ah, you've come about the painting. I've come to return it. All of it. The painting, the key, the grand gesture." She placed the key on a side table with deliberate precision. "I don't accept loans from strangers, especially ones with questionable motivations." Instead of the slick response she expected, Tavian ran a hand through his golden hair, disheveling it in a way that made him look disarmingly boyish. "Would you at least like a drink before rejecting my peace offering? I have an excellent Cabernet." The request was so normal, so lacking in pretense, that it momentarily disarmed her. Fine, one drink." He moved to a well-stocked bar cart, pouring 2 glasses with practiced ease. "For what it's worth, my motivation wasn't particularly complex. The painting belongs in a gallery, not hidden away. You convinced me of that." "With my eloquent slap?" she asked dryly, accepting the glass he offered. His laugh was unexpectedly genuine, crinkling the corners of his eyes. "That was certainly persuasive, but no, it was your passion for the art itself. It's refreshing." "Refreshing," she repeated, taking a sip of wine that flooded her palate with rich flavor. "Is that why you kissed me? For refreshment?" His blue eyes darkened as they fixed on her. I kissed you because watching you stand your ground, fearless and magnificent in your conviction, was the most attractive thing I've witnessed in years." The blunt honesty in his voice sent heat spiraling through her. "That doesn't make it acceptable." "No," he agreed, surprising her again. "It doesn't. I shouldn't have done it without your permission. For that, I apologize." Makeda studied him over the rim of her glass, trying to reconcile this thoughtful man with the arrogant billionaire from the auction. "You're not what I expected, Frost." "Call me Tavian, please." He gestured toward the windows, where dark clouds had begun gathering on the horizon. "It looks like we're in for a storm tonight." As if on cue, a sharp crack of thunder punctuated his words, followed by the sudden drumming of heavy rain against the windows. The abrupt downpour was so intense that the city lights began to blur and distort, creating an impressionistic painting of liquid light. "Spectacular timing," she murmured, moving closer to the window to watch the storm. He joined her, keeping a respectful distance that somehow disappointed her. "San Francisco storms are theatrical, all drama and passion with little subtlety. Rather like certain billionaires," she quipped, earning another of those genuine laughs that transformed his face. "Touché." He raised his glass in acknowledgement. "Though I'd argue I'm capable of subtlety when the situation warrants." The lights flickered once, twice, then plunged the penthouse into darkness. Emergency lights activated moments later, casting the space in a soft blue glow that made everything seem dreamlike. "The backup generator will kick in soon," Tavian said, his voice closer than before. "Are you afraid of storms?" She could just make out his features in the dim light, his proximity sending her pulse racing. "No, I've always loved them. The raw power, the reminder that for all our technology and wealth, nature still holds the upper hand." "A humbling perspective," he murmured. In the blue-tinged darkness, his careful facade seemed to slip further. "The painting is yours for as long as you want it, Makeda. No expectations, no strings. Consider it my apology for the kiss." She studied him in the ethereal light, finding sincerity in his expression. "And if I don't want your apology, if the kiss isn't what I found offensive?" Something kindled in his eyes. Hope, hunger. She couldn't be sure. "What did you find offensive, then?" "The assumption that you could buy anything or anyone." She set her glass down on a nearby table, hyper-aware of his presence. "That wealth equals entitlement." "A fair criticism," he acknowledged, his voice dropping lower. "One I've earned through years of getting whatever I want." "And what do you want now, Tavian?" The question hung between them, loaded with possibility. He took a careful step closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body without quite touching her. "A second chance to make a first impression. Breakfast tomorrow, just conversation." The modest request surprised her again. With the storm raging outside and the electricity unlikely to return soon, he could have suggested she stay. Instead, he was offering something unexpectedly innocent, morning light and conversation. "Breakfast," she repeated, finding herself nodding. "I suppose I could manage that." His smile was slow and genuine, lacking the practiced charm she'd seen at the auction. "Excellent. And the painting?" Makeda sighed, knowing she was likely making a mistake, but unable to resist the pull of both the art and, increasingly, the complex man before her. 3 months, a loan only, with proper credit to the collector. "Done," he agreed immediately. "My assistant will draw up whatever paperwork you require." A particularly violent burst of thunder rattled the windows, accompanied by a flash of lightning that momentarily illuminated his face in harsh white light, revealing an expression so naked with longing that it stole her breath. In that frozen moment of illumination, Makeda glimpsed something she hadn't expected to find in Tavian Frost, a solitude that matched her own, a hunger for something genuine in a world of beautiful facades. The darkness returned, but the image remained burned in her mind, stirring something protective and wanting in equal measure. "I should go before the storm worsens," she said softly. Tavian nodded, though regret flashed across his features. "I'll have my driver take you. He's trained for these conditions." As they walked toward the elevator, Makeda found herself acutely aware of every accidental brush of their arms, every shared glance. This fragile truce between them felt dangerous, far more dangerous than antagonism had been. At the elevator, he caught her hand gently, raising it to his lips in an old-fashioned gesture that somehow held more intimacy than their explosive kiss had. "Until tomorrow, Makeda Sterling," he murmured against her skin. The elevator doors closed on his intense gaze, leaving Makeda breathless and confused, wondering what storm would prove more devastating, the one raging outside or the one building between them. Chapter 3. Crossing Paths. The morning light streamed through the windows of Café Lumière, illuminating Makeda's face as she stared at her phone, absently stirring her latte. 3 days had passed since breakfast. With Tavian, a surprisingly enjoyable affair that had stretched from coffee and croissants to a 2-hour conversation about art, travel, and childhood dreams. It ended with his simple promise to see her again, yet no call had come. "Checking your phone won't make him text faster," Zuri said, sliding into the seat across from her. "I'm not waiting for anyone's text," Makeda lied, tucking her phone away. "I'm checking gallery emails." Zuri's skeptical expression said everything. "So Mr. Billion-Dollar Kiss hasn't called, even after loaning you a painting worth more than my entire life?" Before Makeda could respond, the cafe door opened, and her heart performed an unauthorized somersault in her chest. Tavian Frost stood in the entrance, dressed in casual jeans and a blue sweater that matched his eyes, scanning the room until his gaze found hers. "You have got to be kidding me," Makeda whispered. Zuri turned, her eyes widening. "The universe is either conspiring with you or against you." Tavian approached their table, his smile genuine. "Makeda, what a pleasant surprise." "Is it?" she challenged, raising an eyebrow. "This is the third coincidence this week. Yesterday at Lighthouse Beach, the day before on my morning run." "San Francisco is smaller than it seems," he replied, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "Though I admit I may have noticed a pattern to your coffee habits." "So you're stalking me," she said, torn between annoyance and a treacherous flutter of pleasure. "I prefer strategic proximity." He gestured to their table. "May I join you? I promise my intentions are benign." Zuri stood before Makeda could answer. "Actually, I was just leaving. Gallery emergency." She shot Makeda a wink that wasn't remotely subtle. "You two enjoy your coincidence." Alone with Tavian, Makeda found herself hyper-aware of every movement as he took Zuri's abandoned seat. "You could have called, you know, like a normal person." "I considered that," he admitted, ordering an espresso when the waitress approached. "But I thought this approach might intrigue you more." "You thought wrong," she lied. "I don't find presumptuous billionaires intriguing." His laugh was warm and genuine. "Just presumptuous enough to kiss you back at the auction?" Heat flooded her cheeks at the memory. That was an aberration, a magnificent one. His eyes held hers, the intensity in them making her breath catch. "Tell me what you're working on, Makeda. I want to know what occupies your brilliant mind when you're not slapping arrogant collectors." Despite herself, Makeda found the tension easing from her shoulders as their conversation flowed. Tavian listened with genuine interest as she described her vision for her upcoming exhibition, asking insightful questions that revealed his knowledge wasn't superficial. An hour passed in what felt like minutes. "I should go," she finally said, gathering her things. "Some of us have actual work to do rather than stalking attractive women." "You think I'm attractive?" he teased, following her outside where the early summer sun warmed the sidewalk. "I think you know exactly how attractive you are," she retorted, slipping on her sunglasses. "Walk with me," he suggested, nodding toward the waterfront. "It's too beautiful to rush away." Against her better judgment, Makeda nodded, falling into step beside him. The sea breeze carried the scent of salt and possibility as they strolled along the promenade, their conversation shifting to childhood memories. Tavian described summers, spent alone in boarding schools while his parents traveled, his casual tone belying the loneliness beneath the words. "That explains why you collect things," Makeda observed. "When people are temporary, objects become anchors." Tavian looked at her with surprise. "Most people assume I collect art as status symbols. Most people haven't seen you playing Chopin alone in the dark." A comfortable silence fell between them as they walked, their hands occasionally brushing, each brief contact sending sparks across Makeda's skin. At a street corner, a bicycle messenger swerved suddenly, nearly colliding with Makeda. Tavian's arm shot out, pulling her against his chest with protective instinct. For a breathless moment they stood pressed together, her palms flat against his firm chest, his arms secure around her waist. Makeda looked up, finding his eyes darkened. With the same desire she felt kindling in her veins. "We need to stop meeting like this," she murmured. "I disagree entirely," he replied, his voice husky. His gaze dropped to her lips, the question clear in his eyes. The honking of a car horn broke the spell. Makeda stepped back, her heart racing. "This is a bad idea." "The best ideas often are." Tavian held out his hand. "Have dinner with me tonight. A proper date, no coincidences." Makeda stared at his outstretched hand, knowing accepting it meant stepping into dangerous territory. This man could break her heart if she let him, with his intensity and charm that seemed to penetrate the careful walls she'd built. "One dinner," she agreed, ignoring his hand but offering a smile. "But I choose the restaurant." 3 days later, they had shared not one, but 3 dinners, each ending with lingering goodbyes, but nothing more. The anticipation between them built with every meeting, a delicious tension that left Makeda both frustrated and thrilled. On Sunday morning, Makeda jogged along her usual beach route, Nala, her adopted German shepherd, racing joyfully ahead. The morning fog was beginning to lift, golden sunlight cutting through the mist. She spotted a familiar figure sitting on a driftwood log, sketchpad in hand. "Now you're even invading my dog's beach time?" she called, slowing to a walk. Tavian looked up, a rare, unguarded smile lighting his face. "I swear this is actually coincidence. I come here to sketch when I need to think." "You sketch?" Makeda approached, curiosity piqued. Before he could answer, Nala bounded over, her powerful body vibrating with excitement at meeting someone new. In her enthusiasm, she launched herself at Tavian, leaving muddy paw prints across his clearly expensive white linen shirt and knocking his sketchbook into the sand. "Nala! No!" Makeda lunged forward, grabbing her dog's collar, but the damage was done. To her surprise, Tavian was laughing, ruffling Nala's ears with genuine affection. "Hello, beautiful girl. Aren't you enthusiastic?" "I'm so sorry," Makeda apologized, trying to brush sand from his ruined shirt. "She gets overexcited with new people." "It's just a shirt," he said, scratching under Nala's chin as the dog leaned blissfully into his touch. "Though I think I've been thoroughly claimed now." "She's an excellent judge of character," Makeda admitted, retrieving his fallen sketchbook. She paused, captivated by the open page, a surprisingly skilled drawing of the misty coastline. This is beautiful. A flash of vulnerability crossed his face. A hobby from childhood. My nanny encouraged it. Another hidden talent of Tavian Frost, she murmured, handing it back carefully. What else are you hiding? His eyes met hers, sudden seriousness replacing his humor. Why don't you find out? The invitation in his words was unmistakable, sending a shiver of anticipation through her despite the morning warmth. Before she could respond, Nala barked excitedly, chasing after a seagull and breaking the moment. As they walked together along the shore, Nala racing ahead then circling back, Makeda felt something shifting between them. The careful distance. She'd maintained giving way to genuine connection. Tavian's hand found hers as they climbed over rocky tide pools, his grip warm and secure. When he didn't let go, she didn't pull away. 2 nights later, thundering rain pounded against Makeda's windshield as her car sputtered to a stop on the coastal highway. No, 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 she muttered, turning the key repeatedly with no response. Her phone showed no service in the remote stretch between the gallery and home. For 20 minutes, she sat shivering, watching headlights pass without stopping. When a sleek, black car finally pulled over, her relief turned to disbelief as Tavian emerged, rain soaking his hair and shoulders as he approached her window. "Are you following me again?" she demanded as she rolled down her window. "You missed our dinner," he explained, rain streaming down his face. "I was worried when you didn't answer my calls." The genuine concern in his voice melted her frustration. "My car died. What are you doing out here? Looking for you." The simplicity of his answer caught her off guard. "Come on, let me take you home." The warmth of his car enveloped her as they drove along the stormy coastline. The intimacy of the enclosed space heightened by the drumming rain and occasional lightning illuminating Tavian's profile. "Why do you keep seeking me out?" she asked, finally, watching his hands on the steering wheel. "There are countless women in this city who would throw themselves at Tavian Frost without the chase." He was quiet for a moment, the only sound the rhythmic sweep of windshield wipers. "Because you see me," he said finally. "Not the wealth or the name. That day in my penthouse, you saw me playing Chopin and didn't immediately calculate how to use that vulnerability to your advantage. Is that what women usually do?" "It's what everyone does." There was no self-pity in his voice, only matter-of-fact acceptance. "Everyone wants something from me. What do you want, Makeda?" The question hung between them, loaded with possibilities. As the car climbed the winding coastal road, Makeda found herself studying his profile, illuminated by brief flashes of lightning. The strong jaw, the slight furrow of concentration between his brows, the softness of lips that had haunted her. "Dreams, since that first kiss. I want to know if kissing you was a fluke," she said finally, the honesty of her answer surprising them both. "I want to know if what I feel when you're near me is real, or just some chemical reaction to danger." Tavian's hands tightened on the wheel. He pulled the car over at a scenic overlook, killing the engine. In the sudden silence, the sound of rain became a cocoon around them, intimate and isolating. He turned to her, his blue eyes intense in the dim light. "And how do you propose we test this theory?" Her heart hammered as she unbuckled her seatbelt and leaned across the console. "Empirical research," she whispered against his lips before closing the final distance between them. This kiss was different from their first, not a clash of wills, but a mutual surrender. His hands cradled her face with unexpected tenderness as he kissed her deeply, thoroughly, with the focus he seemed to bring to everything that mattered to him. Makeda felt herself melting, one hand clutching his shirt, while the other slid into his hair. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Tavian rested his forehead against hers. "Hypothesis confirmed?" he asked, his voice rough with desire. Inconclusive, she managed, her body thrumming with want. We might need more data. His laugh was low and promising as he traced her cheekbone with his thumb. I'm very thorough with my research, Miss Sterling. As the storm raged around them, Makeda knew she was crossing a threshold she could never return from, and found, to her surprise, she had no desire to turn back. Chapter 4. Walls Crumbling. You set this up, Makeda accused, standing in the doorway of the beach house, weekend bags still clutched in her hand. The sunset cast golden light across Tavian's amused face as he lounged against the kitchen counter. I'm as surprised as you are, he replied, raising his hands in mock surrender, though not at all disappointed. Zuri appeared behind Makeda, grinning shamelessly. Surprise! It's a friends' weekend getaway, with friends and potential more than friends. I'm going to kill you, Makeda whispered to her traitorous best friend. You'll thank me later, Zuri whispered back, pushing her fully inside the luxurious Malibu beach house. Now play nice with the other children. Over the next few hours, Makeda discovered the friends' getaway included just 6 people, herself, Tavian, Zuri, and her boyfriend Marcus, and another couple who conveniently disappeared after dinner. The setup was transparent but effective, especially with the breathtaking beachfront property providing a romantic backdrop that would make even sworn enemies reconsider their stance. After dinner, as everyone gathered around a fire pit on the beach, Makeda found herself seated beside Tavian on a shared blanket, hyper-aware of his proximity. The flames illuminated his face in shifting gold and shadow, making him look almost otherworldly. Admit it, he said quietly, his shoulder brushing hers as he leaned closer. You're not entirely upset about this arrangement. Don't push your luck, she replied, but couldn't suppress her smile. Since their kiss in the car 3 nights ago, something had shifted between them, a tacit acknowledgement of the chemistry they could no longer deny. As conversation flowed and wine was poured, Makeda gradually relaxed, laughing at Marcus's stories, and joining in when Zuri started an impromptu dance contest. When Tavian pulled her to her feet for a bachata, his hand warm and secure at the small of her back, she didn't resist. I didn't know billionaires could dance, she teased as he guided her expertly across the sand. There's a lot you don't know about me, he murmured against her ear, sending shivers down her spine that had nothing to do with the evening breeze. Later, as the others drifted toward the house, Tavian challenged Makeda to a sandcastle competition. Under the moonlight, they knelt in the cool sand, constructing increasingly elaborate structures while trading competitive banter. That's cheating, Makeda protested when Tavian used his phone as a mold for a perfect tower. That's innovation, he corrected, his grin boyish and carefree, so different from the controlled businessman she'd first met. She retaliated by splashing him with seawater, instantly regretting it when his eyes narrowed with playful vengeance. Seconds later, he had scooped her up in his arms, carrying her thrashing and laughing toward the waves. Don't you dare, she gasped, wrapping her arms around his neck. He paused at the water's edge, her body pressed against his chest. The laughter in his eyes softened to something more intense. Give me one good reason. I'm wearing white, she whispered, watching his eyes darken at the implication. An excellent reason, he conceded, but made no move to put her down. Instead, he stood holding her as gentle waves lapped at his ankles, his gaze dropping to her lips. Before he could kiss her, a massive wave crashed in, soaking them both to the knees. Tavian lost his balance, and they tumbled together into the shallow water, emerging sputtering and shocked. For a beat they stared at each other, drenched and disheveled, before dissolving into uncontrollable laughter. Walking back to the house, wet clothes clinging uncomfortably, Makeda felt lighter than she had in years. "I can't remember the last time I played like that," she admitted. Tavian tucked a wet strand of hair behind her ear. "You should play more often. Your laugh is extraordinary." Under the outdoor shower, they took turns rinsing away sand, a new awareness blooming between them as they helped each other wash away salt and grit. Tavian's hands were gentle as he worked sand from her braids, his touch respectful yet charged with unspoken desire. Later that night, everyone gathered in the main room for stargazing through the massive skylights. As Marcus explained constellations, Makeda found herself nestled against Tavian's side on the oversized sectional, his arm wrapped around her shoulders, drawing her closer as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "That's Cassiopeia," Tavian murmured against her hair, pointing upward, "the queen who boasted of her beauty and angered the gods." "You know your mythology," she said, surprised. "Another boarding school benefit. I read everything I could find when I was alone on holidays." The casual revelation of his childhood, loneliness tugged at something protective in Makeda's chest. She found herself sharing her own memories of feeling different, of being the only black girl in advanced art classes, of how creating became her refuge. As the night deepened, the others drifted off to their rooms. Makeda and Tavian remained, their conversation flowing from art to dreams to fears under the canopy of stars. She found herself telling him about her ex-fiancé's betrayal, how he'd used her ideas, then discarded her, something she rarely shared. "He didn't deserve you," Tavian said simply, his fingers tracing patterns on her arm. "How can you be so sure? You barely know me." His eyes, reflecting starlight, held hers with unexpected vulnerability. "I know enough. I know you're brilliant and passionate and unflinchingly honest. I know you love art because it speaks truths words can't express. I know you're fiercely protective of what matters to you." His understanding left her breathless. Before she could respond, his phone lit up with a text. Something flickered across his face. Concern, perhaps regret. "Work emergency?" she asked. "No," he said after a pause. "Family matter. Nothing urgent." But the moment had shifted. Makeda felt suddenly exhausted, the emotional openness of the evening catching up with her. She stifled a yawn against his shoulder. "You should sleep," Tavian said softly, pressing a kiss to her forehead that felt more intimate than any passionate embrace. They walked in comfortable silence to her bedroom door. Makeda hesitated, torn between inviting him in and protecting her heart that was already falling too fast. "Tavian." "Not tonight," he interrupted gently, brushing his knuckles against her cheek. "When it happens between us, and it will happen, Makeda, I want you fully present, not half asleep and wine-touched." The restraint in his words, the care for her comfort over his desire, crumbled another wall around her heart. She rose on tiptoes, pressing a soft kiss to his lips that held promise rather than demand. "Good night, Tavian Frost," she whispered. "Good night, Makeda Sterling." His smile held wonder, as if he couldn't quite believe she was real. Long after he'd gone to his room, Makeda lay awake, tracing her lips where his touch lingered. Outside, waves crashed against the shore in a rhythm that matched her heartbeat. She was falling for him, this complex man with his unexpected gentleness and hidden depths. The realization should have terrified her. Instead, she felt only a strange peace, as if some part of her had always been waiting for this moment, for him. Morning found them all on the beach for sunrise. While the others prepared breakfast on the deck, Tavian convinced Makeda to walk along the shore. In the soft dawn light, he looked younger. The sharp angles of his face softened as he bent to examine a perfect sand dollar. "For your collection," he said, placing it in her palm and folding her fingers around it. The simple gift touched her more than any expensive present could have. When he took her hand as they walked back, their fingers interlacing naturally, Makeda didn't pull away. Something fundamental had changed between them. The walls they'd both built beginning to crumble against the gentle persistence of genuine connection. That night, as embers from the bonfire glowed red against the darkening beach, Makeda dozed against Tavian's chest, lulled by the steady beat of his heart and the rhythmic stroke of his fingers through her hair. Half asleep, she felt him press a kiss to the top of her head, his arms tightening protectively around her. "What are you doing to me, Makeda?" he whispered, his words barely audible above the waves. Though she kept her eyes closed, feigning sleep, the raw emotion in his voice resonated with the question echoing in her own heart. How had this begun, with a slap and a stolen kiss transformed so quickly into something that felt dangerously close to love? Chapter 5. Surrender to Desire. "One date," Makeda said firmly, facing her reflection in the mirror. "Just to get him out of my system." A week had passed since the beach house weekend, and Tavian's daily texts and calls had worn down her resistance. Tonight would be their official first date, an acknowledgement of whatever this thing between them was becoming. The doorbell rang precisely at 7. Makeda took a steadying breath before opening the door, only to find her carefully cultivated composure instantly threatened. Tavian stood on her doorstep in dark jeans and a charcoal sweater that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders, his golden hair slightly tousled by the evening breeze. But it was the intensity in his blue eyes as they took her in that made her impulse quicken. "You're beautiful," he said simply, holding out a single perfect gardenia instead of the expected roses. "How did you know these are my favorite?" she asked, bringing the fragrant bloom to her nose. His smile was enigmatic. "I pay attention." Instead of the chauffeured luxury car she expected, a sleek motorcycle waited at the curb. Tavian held out a helmet. "Do you trust me?" The question felt weighted with meaning beyond transportation. Makeda took the helmet with a challenging smile. "I'm reserving judgment." Pressed against his back as they roared through the hills above the city, Makeda understood the appeal. Each curve brought her body flush against his, her arms wrapped around his waist, the vibration of the powerful machine beneath them, an echo of the tension building between them. When they finally stopped, Makeda found herself on a secluded hilltop, overlooking San Francisco Bay. Lights sparkled across the water like fallen stars, the Golden Gate Bridge illuminated in the distance. "Most men would try to impress with Michelin stars on a first date," she observed as Tavian spread a blanket and began unpacking an elaborate picnic from the motorcycle's storage compartment. "I'm not most men," he replied, uncorking a bottle of wine that she recognized as a rare vintage. "And this isn't really our first anything, is it?" There was something disarmingly intimate about sitting cross-legged on a blanket rather than across a formal table. Their knees brushed as they shared crusty bread and aged cheese, picked from the same plate of perfectly ripe fruit. Conversation flowed effortlessly, punctuated by laughter and increasingly lingering touches. "Why art?" Tavian asked, refilling her glass. "What drew you to curation rather than creation?" Makeda considered the question, touched that he'd asked something so fundamental about her passion. "I can appreciate genius more clearly than I can channel it. There's a special joy in recognizing greatness in others, in helping beautiful things find the audience they deserve." "That explains why you're so good at seeing through people," Tavian said thoughtfully. "You have a curator's eye for authenticity." "Is that why I missed your hidden depths at first?" she teased. "You've cultivated quite the superficial billionaire image." Something vulnerable flickered in his eyes. "Protective coloration. People see what they expect to see. And what do you want me to see?" She hadn't meant the question to come out so softly, so weighted. Instead of answering, Tavian shifted closer, tracing her cheekbone with gentle fingers. "What do you see now, Makeda?" The night air seemed charged with electricity as his face hovered inches from hers. "I see someone I didn't expect to find," she admitted. "Someone who hides his best parts from the world." His kiss was different this time, not the explosive passion of their first encounter, or the playful exploration of the car. This was slow, deliberate, a man savoring something precious. His hands cradled her face as if she might break, his lips moving against hers with exquisite care. Makeda melted into him, her hands sliding up his chest to curl around his neck, drawing him closer. The kiss deepened, hunger building as his tongue explored her mouth with delicious thoroughness. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, the desire in his eyes matched the heat pooling in her core. "We should slow down," he murmured, even as his thumb traced her lower lip. "Why?" The boldness of her question surprised them, both. "Because I want to do this right." His voice was rough with restraint. "Because you're not a conquest, Makeda." She studied him in the moonlight, this complex man who could be so commanding yet so gentle. The walls she'd built after her ex's betrayal seemed paper-thin now, disintegrating under Tavian's genuine care. "Take me home," she said finally, watching his expression carefully. Something like resignation flickered across his face as he nodded, clearly misunderstanding. They packed the picnic in silence, the earlier warmth dimmed by unspoken tension. On the ride back, Makeda held him tighter than necessary, her cheek pressed against his back. She felt the exact moment he realized they'd passed the turn to her apartment, his body stiffening slightly as she directed him toward the exclusive high-rise where he lived. In the private elevator to his penthouse, they stood apart, the air between them crackling with anticipation. Tavian watched her with careful restraint, giving her every opportunity to change her mind. When the doors opened directly into his home, he stepped out first, turning to face her. "Are you sure?" he asked quietly. Makeda answered by stepping forward and capturing his mouth with hers. The kiss ignited like wildfire, weeks of building tension exploding into desperate need. Tavian's control shattered as he backed her against the wall, his body pressing against hers in a way that left no doubt of his desire. Her fingers tangled in his hair as his mouth blazed a trail down her neck, drawing a soft moan from her lips. They stumbled through the penthouse, shedding clothing along the way, hands exploring newly revealed skin with reverent hunger. In his bedroom, Tavian laid her on the massive bed with unexpected tenderness, his eyes sweeping over her body with such raw appreciation that Makeda felt beautiful in a way no compliment had ever achieved. "You're perfect," he whispered, joining her on the bed. What followed was a revelation. Tavian loved her with the same focused intensity he brought to everything important, learning her body with patient exploration, discovering what made her gasp and arch beneath him. When he finally entered her, their eyes locked in a moment of connection that transcended the physical, something unspoken passing between them that made Makeda's heart constrict with emotion. They moved together in perfect rhythm, building toward a shared peak that crashed over them with shattering force. In the aftermath, breathing heavily as their heartbeats gradually slowed, Tavian gathered her against his chest, pressing soft kisses to her forehead, her cheeks, the corner of her mouth. "Stay," he murmured against her skin, the single word, carrying more weight than elaborate declarations. Wrapped in his arms, feeling impossibly safe in a way she hadn't experienced before, Makeda nodded against his chest. Sleep claimed her slowly as Tavian stroked her back in gentle circles, his heartbeat a steady rhythm beneath her ear. She woke alone, sunlight streaming through vast windows. For a disorienting moment, panic fluttered in her chest. Had she made a terrible mistake? Then she heard soft piano notes floating through the penthouse. Wrapping herself in Tavian's discarded shirt, she followed the music. Tavian sat at the grand piano, wearing only loose pajama pants, his back to her as his fingers moved across the keys. The melody was something original and hauntingly beautiful, tinged with both melancholy and hope. In the morning light, she could see faint scars across his back, remnants of some old pain he hadn't shared. Sensing her presence, he turned, his expression so open and vulnerable it caught her breath. No masks, no careful charm, just Tavian, stripped of pretense. "You're still here," he said, wonder and relief mingling in his voice. The surprise in his tone told her volumes about his past. How many women had left while he slept? How many had seen him only as a wealthy prize, rather than the complex man beneath? "I'm still here," she confirmed, moving to join him on the piano bench. His arm circled her waist naturally, drawing her against his side as he resumed playing with his free hand, a simpler version of the melody. They sat in comfortable silence as morning light bathed them in gold, the intimacy of the moment more profound than the passion they'd shared hours before. Later, as they shared coffee on his terrace overlooking the bay, Makeda realized something had fundamentally shifted. This wasn't just desire or chemistry or fascination. This was the beginning of something deeper, something that terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. "What are you thinking?" Tavian asked, watching her over the rim of his cup. The truth rose to her lips before she could filter it, that I'm falling for you. And it scares me. Instead of the smooth reassurance she half expected, Tavian set down his cup and took her hands, his expression serious. "It terrifies me too. I don't have a great track record with things that matter." The honesty of his admission, the lack of practiced charm, made her heart expand. "So we're both scared. What do we do with that?" His smile was slow and genuine, reaching his eyes in a way that transformed his face. "We take it one day at a time, together." As his lips met, hers in a kiss that felt like promise and beginning, Makeda surrendered to more than desire. She surrendered to possibility, to the terrifying, exhilarating chance that what had begun with anger and attraction might grow into something neither of them had dared to hope for, love that could heal old wounds and create something beautiful from broken pieces. Chapter 6. Storms Within. 3 weeks of bliss had transformed Makeda's life into something she barely recognized. Mornings waking in Tavian's arms, evenings spent in deep conversation or comfortable silence as they worked, side by side, weekends exploring hidden corners of the city as if seeing it anew through each other's eyes. For the first time since her ex-fiancé's betrayal, she had let someone past her defenses. "You're humming again," Zuri observed, arranging a display at the gallery. "I haven't heard you hum in years." Makeda touched her lips, surprised to find them curved in a smile she couldn't seem to suppress lately. "Am I that obvious?" "You're that happy," Zuri corrected, her expression softening. "It looks good on you." Before Makeda could respond, her phone buzzed with a message. She expected Tavian. They had dinner plans that evening, but instead found herself staring at a name she'd hoped never to see again. "Dominic. We need to talk. About us." Her ex-fiancé's message sent ice through her veins, memories of heartbreak and humiliation rushing back, 3 years of silence, and now he wanted to talk. She deleted the message without responding, but the damage was done, her perfect bubble of happiness punctured by the past. That evening, dark clouds gathered as Makeda hurried from the gallery to meet Tavian. The weather matched her mood, unsettled and threatening, When she reached the restaurant, she spotted him immediately, golden and perfect, at their usual corner table, his smile warming as he saw her approach. "What's wrong?" he asked immediately, rising to kiss her cheek. Of course he would notice. In weeks, he'd learned to read her better than Dominic had in years. "Nothing," she lied, forcing a smile. "Just gallery stress." Throughout dinner, she tried to recapture their usual easy flow, but Dominic's message had awakened old insecurities. She found herself watching Tavian's interactions with their beautiful waitress with new suspicion, analyzing his words for hidden meanings. "You're not here with me tonight," Tavian observed softly as they walked along the waterfront afterward, the wind picking up around them. "Where have you gone?" Before she could answer, her phone buzzed again. Another message from Dominic. "I've seen the photos of you with Frost. Be careful, Makeda. Men like him only want one thing." Tavian, glimpsing the name on her screen, stiffened. "Dominic? Your ex?" "It's nothing," she said quickly, tucking the phone away. "He's trying to get back in touch. And you didn't tell me." The hurt in his voice was palpable. There was nothing to tell. Irritation flared, unexpected and sharp. "I don't report to you, Tavian." His eyes narrowed. "That's not what I meant. Isn't it? You want to know everything, control everything." The words came from nowhere, fueled by resurging fears. Just like every other privileged man who thinks the world belongs to him. The flash of pain across his face should have stopped her, but old wounds had been reopened, bleeding into the present. "That's not fair, and you know it," he said quietly. "Don't I? When's the last time we did anything I wanted instead of what the great Tavian Frost decreed?" She was being irrational, unfair, but couldn't seem to stop the defensive words. "Yesterday. The gallery opening you were excited about," he answered evenly, though his jaw had tightened. "The day before, that fusion restaurant you wanted to try." His reasonable response only fueled her irrational anger. "So you're keeping score? Checking boxes to ensure the relationship meets your standards?" Thunder rumbled overhead as the first heavy raindrops began to fall. Neither moved to seek shelter, the brewing storm around them mirroring the one between them. "What's really going on here, Makeda?" Tavian's voice had gone dangerously soft. "This isn't about restaurant choices. Maybe I'm realizing how easy it is to get swept away in the fantasy of you," she shot back, rain beginning to soak through her blouse. "The charming billionaire who collects beautiful things until he gets bored." Hurt flashed in his eyes but was quickly replaced by anger. "Is that really what you think of me, after everything we've shared? I don't know what to think anymore." The rain was falling in earnest now, plastering her hair to her face. "3 weeks ago, I hated you. How can I possibly trust this?" "Trust works both ways," he said, rain streaming down his face. "I trusted you enough to let you see parts of me no one else has. Was I a fool to believe you saw the real me?" The raw vulnerability beneath his anger stopped her cold, cutting through her spiral of fear. Before she could respond, a passing car hit a puddle, sending a wave of dirty water across the sidewalk. Tavian instinctively stepped in front of her, taking the brunt of the splash. The absurdity of it, him standing there dripping with muddy water, still trying to protect her, even as she hurt him, broke something inside her. A sob escaped before she could stop it. Makeda. Concern instantly replaced his anger as he reached for her. "Don't," she whispered, stepping back. I can't do this right now." With rain mingling with her tears, she turned and fled, hailing a passing taxi. Through the rear window, she watched him standing motionless in the downpour, making no move to follow, respecting her request for space, even as hurt etched his features. Back in her apartment, soaked and miserable, Makeda faced her reflection in the bathroom mirror. What was she doing? sabotaging the best thing in her life because old ghosts had resurfaced. Her phone buzzed with a notification. Expecting another message from Dominic, she was surprised to find a viral photo circulating online instead. Her and Tavian from their argument, captured by some passerby. Even drenched and clearly arguing, the intensity between them was palpable, his protective stance and her passionate expression creating an image that radiated complicated emotion. The caption read, "Trouble in Paradise." Art curator Makeda Sterling and billionaire Tavian Frost's stormy showdown. Mortification flooded her. Their private moment had become public spectacle. And worse, this was exactly how Dominic would have found out about them. Seeing the photo, she suddenly understood his cryptic warning in a new light. He wasn't concerned, he was jealous. Her phone rang. Tavian. She let it go to voicemail, not ready to face him yet. Instead, she listened to the rain beating against her windows, trying to untangle the knot of emotions in her chest. The doorbell rang 20 minutes later. She opened it to find Tavian standing there, still damp from the rain, his expression a complex mixture of determination and vulnerability. "You don't have to talk," he said, before she could speak, "but I need you to listen." When she stepped aside to let him in, he remained in the doorway, as if afraid to encroach on her space. "I've never done this before," he admitted, running a hand through his wet hair. "I've never cared enough to fight for someone when they pushed me away. It was always easier to let go." The raw honesty in his voice held her silent. "I don't know how to do this right," he continued. "I make mistakes. I'm controlling sometimes because control is how I survived a childhood where nothing was certain except abandonment. But I'm trying, Makeda. For you, I'm trying." Her chest tightened with emotion. "Tavian, let me finish," he interrupted gently. "Whatever your ex did to you, whatever he's saying now, I'm not him. I can't promise I'll never hurt you. But I can promise I'll never intentionally cause you pain." Rain dripped from his hair. As he looked at her with such sincere intensity, it took her breath away. "I'm falling in love with you, Makeda Sterling, and it terrifies me because I've never said those words to anyone before. But I'd rather be terrified with you than safe without you." The declaration hung between them, honest and unadorned. No practiced charm, no grand gestures, just truth, offered without expectation. Makeda stepped forward, closing the distance between them. "He stole my designs," she whispered, finally, sharing the full truth. "Dominic took my ideas, my work, claimed them as his own, then left me when I confronted him. He made me doubt everything, my talent, my judgment, my worth." Understanding dawned in Tavian's eyes. "And now he's back, making you doubt us." "I let him," she admitted, tears welling. "I let old fears poison something beautiful. I'm sorry." Tavian reached for her slowly, as if she were something precious that might break. When she didn't pull away, he drew her into his arms, cradling her against his chest. "We're both broken in places," he murmured against her hair. "Maybe that's why we fit together so well." She looked up at him, this complicated man who had crashed into her life with the force of a storm. "I'm falling in love with you too," she whispered, the admission both terrifying and liberating. "And I'm not running from it anymore." His kiss was gentle at first, a question rather than a demand. But when her arms twined around his neck, pulling him closer, gentleness gave way to desperate need. They stumbled together through her apartment, leaving a trail of damp clothing in their wake. Their lovemaking was different this time, more urgent, almost desperate, as if trying to erase the doubt that had briefly come between them. Tavian whispered promises against her skin, his touch alternating between reverent and possessive. When release finally came, it left them both trembling and breathless, clinging to each other as the storm outside gradually subsided. Later, tangled, in sheets with her head on his chest, Makeda traced the outline of his heart with her fingertip. "The photo of us arguing is everywhere online," she murmured. His laugh rumbled beneath her ear. "I know. My assistant called in a panic, worried I was ruining my carefully crafted image." "And what did you tell her?" His arms tightened around her. "That some things matter more than image. You matter more." As she drifted towards sleep in his embrace, Makeda realized that for the first time in years, she felt truly safe. Not because Tavian had promised never to hurt her, but because he had the courage to be vulnerable with her. Their broken pieces, aligned in ways that made them both stronger, their storms weathered together rather than alone. Outside, the rain had stopped. Stars peeked through clearing clouds, promising calmer skies ahead. Chapter 7. Healing Touch. "Will you please calm down? They're just my parents," Makeda laughed, straightening Tavian's already perfect tie as they stood outside her grandmother's modest Victorian home. "Just your parents and the grandmother you describe as your personal hero," Tavian corrected, uncharacteristically nervous. "The most important people in your life, meeting the man who was photographed arguing with you in the rain 2 weeks ago." "They've seen plenty of better photos since then," she reminded him, referring to their increasingly public appearances together. After the viral rain photo, they'd decided to stop hiding their relationship, resulting in significant media attention that neither had anticipated. "That's not helping," Tavian muttered, running a hand through his hair, disheveling the careful styling. Makeda reached up to smooth it back into place, touched by his anxiety. In the 6 weeks they'd been together, she'd seen him confidently handle business magnates and celebrities without breaking a sweat. Yet here he stood, practically fidgeting at the prospect of meeting her family. "They'll love you," she assured him, rising on tiptoes to press a quick kiss to his lips. "Just be yourself." He caught her hand as she reached for the doorbell. "The real myself, not the billionaire mask." "Exactly." Her heart swelled at the distinction. "The man who brings me coffee in bed and argues passionately about art theory. The man I'm falling in love with." The door swung open before she could ring the bell, revealing Makeda's mother, Adana, elegant in a jewel-toned wrap dress, her braids threaded with silver. "You two planning to stand on the porch all evening?" she asked with a knowing smile. Dinner was a revelation for Makeda, watching Tavian seamlessly integrate into her family's warm chaos. He listened intently to her father's stories about teaching history, asked thoughtful questions about her mother's scientific research, and most surprisingly, formed an immediate bond with her grandmother, Flora. "Your young man knows his way around a kitchen," Flora remarked, when Tavian insisted on helping clear the dishes, the two of them working in comfortable tandem. "He's full of surprises," Makeda agreed, watching as her grandmother handed Tavian a knife and he began expertly slicing the sweet potato pie they'd brought for dessert. "He looks at you the way your grandfather looked at me," Flora said softly. "Like you're the answer to a question he's been asking his whole life." Later, as they gathered in the living room, the conversation turned to Tavian's background. When her father innocently asked about his parents, Makeda tensed, knowing this was difficult territory. "I was raised primarily in boarding schools," Tavian answered with practiced ease, though Makeda noticed how his hand tightened slightly around his coffee cup. "My parents traveled extensively for business." "They must be proud of your success," her mother said, oblivious to the undercurrent. A shadow crossed Tavian's face. "We're not in contact," The brief silence that followed was broken by Flora. "Family isn't always blood," she said decisively. "It's the people who stay when others walk away." Tavian looked at the elderly woman with naked gratitude in his eyes, and Makeda felt herself falling even deeper in love with him. As they prepared to leave, Flora suddenly clutched her chest, her face contorting with pain. What followed was a blur of activity. Tavian's calm efficiency as he carried Flora to his car, his steady presence during the frantic rush to the hospital, his quiet authority ensuring she received immediate attention. Hours later, with Flora stabilized after what was thankfully a minor cardiac event, Makeda found herself in the hospital garden with Tavian, dawn breaking over the horizon. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice hoarse from worry. "I don't know what I would have done without you tonight." He drew her close, his strength anchoring her. "You would have handled it beautifully because that's who you are. But I'm glad you didn't have to do it alone." Looking up at him in the soft morning light, exhaustion etched on his handsome features, Makeda realized he'd never once checked his phone or mentioned the business meetings he must be missing. He had simply been there, steady and unwavering. "What?" he asked, noticing her intense gaze. "I love you," she said simply. "No falling anymore, no qualifiers, just truth." Something shifted in his expression, wonder mingled with a joy so pure it transformed him. "Say it again," he whispered. "I love you, Tavian Frost." This time her voice was stronger, more certain. His kiss was gentle, yet profound, a physical manifestation of the emotion flowing between them. When they parted, his eyes were suspiciously bright. "I love you too, Makeda Sterling, more than I thought it was possible to love anyone." 2 days later, with Flora recovering well at home, Makeda received an unexpected call from Tavian's assistant. "Ms. Sterling, I apologize for the intrusion, but I thought you should know," the woman said hesitantly. "Mr. Frost's foster brother was admitted to rehab yesterday. He's been with him since last night." The revelation stunned Makeda. Tavian had mentioned being in foster care briefly as a teenager, but never spoke of maintaining connections from that time. More shocking was that he hadn't told her about this crisis. That evening, she let herself into his penthouse with the key he'd given her weeks earlier, finding him on the terrace, a glass of whiskey untouched beside him as he stared. "Out at the city lights. Your assistant called me," she said without preamble. He didn't turn. Layla shouldn't have done that. "Someone needed to." She moved beside him, close but not touching. "Why didn't you tell me?" "You have enough to worry about with your grandmother." His profile was rigid, jaw tight with tension. "That's not how this works," she said gently. "Your burdens are mine now, just as mine are yours." Something cracked in his carefully controlled expression. "Lucas is the closest thing to family I have. We were in the same foster home for 3 years, the only decent one I ever had. He was 9 when I was 15. He swallowed hard. "This is his 3rd time in rehab." Makeda took his hand, squeezing it gently. "Tell me about him." As night deepened around them, Tavian spoke of the brilliant, troubled young man who had been his only constant during turbulent years. How they'd stayed connected, despite the system's attempts to separate them. How he'd helped Lucas through college and starting his own business. How addiction had gradually claimed the promising life. "I keep failing him," Tavian confessed, raw vulnerability in his voice. "All my resources, and I can't fix this." "Some things can't be fixed by money or power," Makeda said softly. "Some battles people have to fight themselves." "Then what's the point of everything I've built?" The question seemed torn from somewhere deep inside him. Makeda turned his face toward hers, forcing him to meet her gaze. "The point is you're there, no matter how many times he falls. The point is he's not fighting alone." Something released in Tavian's expression. A burden carried too long in solitude. When he pulled her into his arms, burying his face against Her neck, she felt the dampness of tears he'd likely never allowed anyone else to see. That night, their lovemaking held a different quality. Less passionate heat, more profound connection. Tavian's touches were reverent, almost worshipful, as if through physical union he could express emotional depths he still struggled to verbalize. Afterward, tangled together in his bed, he traced the curve of her hip with gentle fingers. "You've seen all my broken pieces now," he murmured against her hair. "And I love every one of them," she replied, pressing a kiss over his heart. "They're what make you real, not just some perfect fantasy." His smile held a shadow of his usual confidence. "I'm definitely not perfect." "Perfect for me," she corrected, snuggling closer. The following week brought another revelation when Makeda's curator friend sent her an article about foster care advocacy featuring a substantial anonymous donation to create transitional housing for aging-out foster youth. "This wouldn't happen to be your work," she asked Tavian that evening, showing him the article. The hint of color on his cheekbones confirmed her suspicion. "I should have known Marcus would figure it out. We serve on the same arts council." "Why keep it anonymous?" She studied his uncomfortable expression with fascination. Tavian shrugged, clearly ill at ease with the conversation. "Public philanthropy often becomes more about the giver than those receiving help." In that moment, another piece of the puzzle that was Tavian, Frost, fell into place for Makeda. Beneath the wealthy playboy image and the shrewd businessman exterior was a man who used his resources to heal wounds similar to his own, without seeking credit or praise. Their relationship deepened further when Flora insisted Tavian join their weekly family dinner tradition. Watching him help her grandmother in the kitchen, debating literature with her father, or laughing at her mother's dry humor, Makeda realized he was finding with her family what he'd been denied in childhood. A sense of belonging, of being valued for himself rather than his wealth or accomplishments. "Your grandmother gave me her cobbler recipe," he announced one night as they walked along the marina, moonlight silvering the water. "She said it's only shared with family." The significance wasn't lost on Makeda. Flora's recipes were legendary, passed down through generations with near religious reverence. "She's adopting you," Makeda confirmed, squeezing his hand. "Consider yourself officially part of the Sterling clan, with all the Sunday dinners and holiday chaos that entails." Tavian stopped walking, turning to face her with unexpected seriousness. "Is that what you want, for me to be part of your family?" The vulnerability in his question tugged at her heart. "You already are," she said simply. "You're part of me now." Under the stars, with the gentle sound of waves providing a soundtrack, his kiss held promise and belonging, a healing touch for wounds they both had carried too long alone. In each other's arms, they had found not just passion but home, a sanctuary where broken pieces became beautiful mosaics and past pain transformed into the capacity for deeper love. As they walked back hand in hand, Makeda realized with perfect clarity that what had begun with a slap and an arrogant kiss had become the most profound relationship of her life, one where both of them could finally lower their defenses and heal together. Chapter 8. Public Hearts. "You're sure about this?" Tavian asked, his thumb tracing gentle circles on the back of Makeda's hand as their car approached the glittering venue. "We can still back out." Makeda smoothed an invisible wrinkle from her gold gown, a custom creation that draped her curves like liquid sunlight. "It's just a charity gala," she said, with more confidence than she felt. "We've been to events together before." "Not like this one." Tavian's eyes held concern behind their usual warmth. "The Winthrop Foundation Gala is essentially a parade of old money and older prejudices, my family's former social circle." The unspoken hung between them. This would be their most public appearance as a couple and in the most traditional of San Francisco's high society events. 3 months into their relationship, they'd grown accustomed to occasional paparazzi and gossip columns. But this was different. This was Tavian deliberately bringing her into a world that had once been his prison. "I can handle judgmental socialites," Makeda assured him, lifting her chin with determination. "I curate art galleries, remember? Dealing with wealthy patrons is my specialty." His smile held a hint of wonder. "Have I told you today that I love you?" "Only twice. You're slipping, Frost." The teasing broke the tension, and when the car door opened, they emerged together, a striking couple that immediately drew every eye. Tavian's hand rested protectively at the small of her back as they navigated the red carpet, camera flashes creating a storm of light around them. Inside, the ballroom was a cathedral to wealth. Crystal chandeliers, champagne fountains, ice sculptures capturing and refracting light like massive diamonds. Makeda recognized faces from magazine covers and society pages, their curious glances following her and Tavian as they moved through the space. "Tavian Frost, I was beginning to think you'd abandoned civilization entirely." A silver-haired woman approached, her smile not reaching her calculating eyes. 3 charity galas missed this season. People were talking. "Evelyn." Tavian's smile held perfect politeness without warmth. "I've been pleasantly occupied. May I introduce Makeda Sterling? Makeda, this is Evelyn Winthrop, our hostess." The woman's assessment was swift and dismissive. "Charmed. I believe I've seen your name associated with that little gallery in the Mission District?" "Prism Gallery, yes," Makeda replied smoothly, "though we've expanded to a second location in New York last month." Surprise flickered across Evelyn's features. Clearly she hadn't expected articulation or accomplishment. "How enterprising. Tavian, darling, Vivian was asking after you earlier. You really should say hello." As she glided away, Tavian leaned close to Makeda's ear. "Round 1 to Sterling. You handled that beautifully." "Who's Vivienne?" Makeda asked, trying to sound casual. "Former mistake," he replied honestly. "One I have no interest in revisiting." Throughout dinner, Makeda found herself seated among people who spoke around rather than to her, as if her presence was an amusing novelty rather than a legitimate companion to one of San Francisco's wealthiest bachelors. She maintained her composure, drawing on years of navigating the art world's sometimes toxic elitism. During a brief moment alone, while Tavian spoke with a business associate, Makeda escaped to a quiet alcove overlooking the garden, needing a moment of peace from the subtle barbs and evaluating glances. "He'll get bored, you know." Makeda turned to find a stunning blonde woman watching her with thinly veiled hostility. The designer dress and perfect makeup couldn't disguise the bitterness in her eyes. "Vivienne, I presume?" Makeda kept her voice level. The woman's smile was sharp as a blade. "He didn't mention me. I'm hurt." She moved closer, champagne glass dangling from manicured fingers. "Tavian has a pattern, the exotic fascination, the intense romance, then the inevitable disillusionment when reality fails to match the fantasy he's created." Though the words struck uncomfortably close to early fears, Makeda refused to show weakness. "Thank you for your concern, but I'm quite confident in our relationship." "Of course you are." Vivian's laugh held no humor. "Every new toy believes she's special until she's replaced. I lasted 6 months, his longest relationship. I wonder how much longer." "You have?" Before Makeda could respond, another voice joined the conversation. "Not nearly as long as your bitterness has lasted, Vivienne. It's been, what, 2 years since I ended things? Yet here you are, still desperate for my attention." Tavian stood in the doorway, his expression cold in a way Makeda had never witnessed. The playboy charm and the warm vulnerability she'd come to love were both absent, replaced by something harder. The armor he'd developed in this world of beautiful facades and calculated cruelties. Vivian's composure faltered. "We were just having a friendly chat, darling." "Save the performance," he said flatly. "If you speak to Makeda again, you'll find yourself permanently unwelcome in every gallery, museum opening, and charity event worth attending in this city. My influence may not interest you anymore, but I imagine social exile would." The threat, delivered with silky precision, drained the color from Vivian's face. She retreated without another word, dignity barely intact. Once alone, Tavian's cold mask dissolved, concern flooding his features as he reached for Makeda. "I'm sorry. I knew bringing you here was a mistake." "It wasn't," she assured him, squeezing his hands. "I needed to see this part of your world to understand you better." His thumb brushed her cheek with tender reverence. "This isn't my world anymore. You are." The naked emotion in his voice stole her breath. Before she could respond, the orchestra began playing, signaling the start of dancing. Tavian offered his arm with a soft smile. "Shall we shock the aristocracy further?" On the dance floor, Tavian held her closer than propriety dictated, his eyes never leaving hers as they moved together with practiced ease. Weeks of impromptu dancing in his kitchen or her living room had created a physical harmony between them that translated beautifully to the formal waltz. "Everyone's watching us," Makeda murmured, aware of the attention they commanded. "Let them watch," he replied, spinning her in a graceful turn. "I want them all to see exactly what matters to me." As the music shifted to a slower melody, Tavian drew her closer still, his lips brushing her ear. "I've attended these events my entire adult life, playing the role expected of me. Tonight is the first time I've ever felt like myself here because of you." The admission, simple yet profound, touched something deep in Makeda's heart. Rising on tiptoes, she kissed him, not the polite public display appropriate for such a setting, but a genuine expression of the emotions swelling in her chest. The ripple of shocked whispers was almost audible. Public displays of genuine emotion were apparently more scandalous than any number of discreet affairs conducted in shadowy corners. Midway through the evening, Makeda excused herself to the powder room, only to overhear two women speaking as she entered a stall. "Clearly his exotic phase," one voice said dismissively. "You know how these tech billionaires are, always trying to prove how progressive they are by dating outside their circle." "She's pretty enough, I suppose, in that striking way," another replied. "But honestly, can you imagine her at the Rockefeller wedding next month? She's from the Mission District, for heaven's sake." "My husband says it won't last. Tavian Frost might play at rebellion, but when it comes time to build a dynasty, he'll choose appropriately. Blood always tells." Makeda emerged from the stall, facing the two startled women with perfect composure as she washed her hands. "Ladies," she acknowledged, with a regal nod, hiding how deeply their words had cut. Their stammered responses followed her out the door. Back in the ballroom, she found Tavian deep in conversation with an elderly gentleman, his expression animated as he gestured emphatically. Seeing her approach, his entire face transformed with a smile so genuine and unguarded that the gossiping women's words lost their sting. This was the real Tavian, passionate, engaged, capable of lighting up at the mere sight of her across a room. Whatever doubts society whispered, they couldn't touch the truth of what existed between them. Later, as waiters circulated with champagne for the foundation director's toast, Makeda found herself separated from Tavian by the crowd. The foundation director, a distinguished woman in her 60s, acknowledged major donors and board members, finally turning toward where Tavian stood near the stage. And, of course, our gratitude to Tavian Frost, whose generous contribution to our education initiative was, as always, the evening's largest. Polite applause followed as Tavian nodded acknowledgement, his expression revealing nothing of the discomfort Makeda knew he felt at public recognition. Though I must say, the director continued with a knowing smile, we're all more interested in your other recent developments, Tavian. Your mysterious lady has been the subject of much speculation. A spotlight swung to where Makeda stood, suddenly illuminated for the entire room's inspection. Her heart hammered as hundreds of evaluating gazes turned toward her. Perhaps you'd introduce her properly, the director prompted, clearly expecting a brief, polite acknowledgement. Instead, Tavian crossed the room with purposeful strides, taking Makeda's hand and leading her to the center of the floor. The spotlight followed, creating a pool of light around them, amidst the sea of San Francisco's elite. "This is Makeda Sterling," he began, his voice carrying easily through the hushed room. "Acclaimed gallery curator, artist advocate, and the woman I love." The simple declaration, made without qualification or apology, sent a ripple through the crowd. Makeda felt the weight of hundreds of surprised stares, but Tavian's steady gaze anchored her. "For those wondering about our relationship, and I know you all are, let me be perfectly clear," he continued, a new edge entering his voice. "Makeda isn't a phase or a statement. She's the most authentic, brilliant person I've ever known, and I'm a better man for loving her." The silence that followed was absolute, broken only when Tavian lowered his lips to hers in a kiss that, while brief, left no doubt about the depth of his feelings. When they parted, his smile held a hint of his old arrogance, the confidence of a man who had just rewritten the rules of a game he'd mastered long ago. "I believe that concludes the evening's entertainment," he said softly, for her ears alone. "Shall we leave them something to talk about for the next decade?" The drive home was quiet, Makeda's head resting on Tavian's shoulder as the city lights blurred past the window. The weight of the evening, its subtle cruelties and unexpected triumphs, had left her emotionally drained, yet strangely peaceful. "Thank you," she said finally, breaking the comfortable silence. "For what?" "For defending me. For claiming me publicly." She traced the line of his jaw with gentle fingers. "For being willing to burn bridges that took a lifetime to build." Tavian caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "Those bridges led nowhere. I want to go anymore. My future is with you, if you'll have me." The simple sincerity of his words brought tears to her eyes. "I will. Through gossip columns and society galas and whatever else the world throws at us." Back at his penthouse, they made love with a new dimension of connection, the final walls between them crumbling in the aftermath of public declaration. Every touch, every whispered endearment carried the weight of certainty that this wasn't just passion or compatibility, but something rarer and more precious. A love strong enough to withstand public scrutiny and private doubts, transforming two fractured souls into something whole and unbreakable. As dawn painted the sky in watercolor hues, Tavian propped himself on one elbow, watching Makeda's peaceful, sleeping face with undisguised adoration. When her eyes fluttered open, finding him already awake, her smile was lazy with contentment. "What are you thinking?" she murmured, voice husky with sleep. His answer was simple and profound, a truth that had been forming since that first explosive meeting when she dared to slap the arrogant billionaire who thought the world was his for the taking. "I'm thinking that the moment you walked into my life, everything that came before was just preparation. Everything that follows will be because of you." In the gentle morning light, their kisses held not just passion but promise, of mornings and evenings to come, of a future built on understanding rather than expectation, of hearts that had found in each other not just desire, but home. Chapter 9. paradise and pain. "Where exactly are you taking me?" Makeda asked, peering out the private jet's window at endless blue ocean below. 4 months into their relationship, Tavian still managed to surprise her, this time with a mysterious trip requiring her passport and summer clothing. "Patience was never your strong suit," Tavian teased from the seat beside her, his fingers interlaced with hers. The past week since the charity gala had brought a new ease to their relationship, a certainty that had settled comfortably between them. Says the man who once sent 3 texts and called twice when I was 15 minutes late for dinner. His laugh warmed her heart, the sound freer and more frequent these days. "Fair point. We're going to my island." "Your island," she repeated flatly, "as in an island you own." "A small one," he qualified with an attempt at modesty that made her roll her eyes. "Off the coast of Belize. I bought it years ago when I needed somewhere to escape." 3 hours later, as their helicopter approached a lush green jewel set in turquoise waters, Makeda understood why he'd been reluctant to share this place before now. The island was clearly more than a luxury possession. It was a sanctuary. The villa, nestled among palm trees, wasn't the ostentatious mansion she'd half expected, but a sprawling single-story structure of natural wood and stone that blended harmoniously with the surrounding landscape. Floor-to-ceiling windows embraced the breathtaking views, while covered verandas extended living spaces into the outdoors. "It's beautiful," she breathed, as Tavian led her through rooms filled with simple, elegant furnishings and local artwork. "Not what I expected." "What did you expect? Gold fixtures and marble statues?" His smile held a hint of vulnerability, as if her approval mattered deeply. "Something less." "You," she admitted, tracing her fingers along a handcrafted wooden table. "This place feels personal, not like a status symbol." "It's the only property I own that no designer has touched," he explained, opening doors to a master suite where a king-sized bed faced the ocean. "I worked with local craftsmen, chose everything myself." The revelation touched her, this intensely private man sharing his most authentic space with her. "Thank you for bringing me here." His kiss was gentle, filled with promise. "I've never brought anyone before. This place has always been just mine, until now." The following days unfolded in idyllic tranquility. They swam in crystal waters, explored hidden coves, and spent hours simply existing together without schedules or interruptions. Tavian proved to be a skillful dive instructor, guiding Makeda through underwater wonders with patient hands and reassuring smiles. On their 3rd evening, they sat on the beach watching the sunset paint the sky in spectacular oranges and pinks. Makeda's head rested on Tavian's shoulder, his arm wrapped around her as if he couldn't bear any distance between them. "I never knew I could be this happy," she confessed quietly. "It almost scares me sometimes, how complete I feel with you." His arm tightened around her. "I know exactly what you mean. Before you, I didn't understand what was missing, only that something was. Now everything makes sense," she finished, tilting her face to meet his gaze. The kiss they shared held something beyond passion, a reverence, a recognition of something rare and precious growing between them. Later that night, with gentle waves providing a rhythmic soundtrack through open windows, their lovemaking carried the same reverent quality. Every touch communicated devotion, every whispered endearment a promise, until they lay tangled together in moonlight, hearts beating in synchrony. "Teach me to dance in the rain," Makeda requested the following afternoon as a sudden tropical shower swept across the island. Standing on the covered veranda, she watched silver sheets of rain transform the landscape. Tavian looked up from his book with raised eyebrows. "You want to dance in a thunderstorm?" "I want to do something that the carefully controlled Tavian Frost would never do," she challenged with a mischievous smile, something spontaneous and possibly foolish. His laugh was surprised and genuine. I've done plenty of foolish things. Name one that didn't involve calculated risk. The gauntlet. Thrown, Tavian set aside his book and stood. Without warning, he scooped her into his arms, carrying her down the veranda steps directly into the downpour. Her surprised squeal turned to laughter as warm rain instantly soaked them both. "Happy now?" he asked, raindrops clinging to his eyelashes as he set her feet on the wet sand. In answer, Makeda began to move, arms raised to the sky, spinning in joyful abandon as rain plastered her sundress to her body. "Dance with me!" For a moment he simply watched her, something like wonder in his expression. Then, to her delight, Tavian Frost, billionaire, art collector, and the most self-possessed man she'd ever known, began to dance in the rain. Without music except the storm itself, they moved together, laughing as he twirled her through puddles, their bodies sliding against each other in wet, playful embraces. "You're magnificent," he murmured against her rain-slicked neck, lifting her into his arms again as the storm intensified. Completely, utterly magnificent. Back inside, they left puddles across the polished floors as they stumbled toward the shower, shedding wet clothes between kisses that tasted of rain and freedom. On their fifth day, Tavian announced he would prepare dinner himself. "No peeking," he insisted, banishing Makeda from the kitchen despite her skeptical expression. 2 hours later, smoke alarms shattered the villa's tranquility. Makeda rushed to the kitchen to find Tavian frantically waving a towel at a smoking oven, flour dusting his hair, and what appeared to be sauce splattered across his shirt. "Don't laugh," he warned as she covered her mouth, eyes widening at the chaos. "I wouldn't dream of it," she managed, voice trembling with suppressed mirth. "This was supposed to be jerk chicken, your favorite." He gestured helplessly at the charred remains. "I had the chef create a simplified recipe before we arrived. I followed it exactly." The genuine disappointment in his voice broke her restraint. Laughter bubbled up, unstoppable and infectious, until even Tavian's wounded pride crumbled into sheepish amusement. "Tavian Frost, master of global finance, defeated by poultry," she teased, wrapping her arms around his waist. "It's oddly comforting to find something you're terrible at." "I excel at ordering takeout," he defended, pressing a flowery kiss to her forehead. They ended up creating sandwiches together, eating on the veranda with their legs tangled together on a lounger. The disaster transformed into another perfect memory. On their 7th morning, Makeda woke alone, finding a note on Tavian's pillow. "Gone for supplies. Back by noon. Love you." With hours to herself, she decided to explore parts of the villa she hadn't yet seen. In a small study off the main living area, bookshelves lined with well-worn classics suggested hours of solitary reading. A desk near the window held a leather-bound journal and several framed photographs, rare glimpses into Tavian's private history. One photo showed a teenage Tavian with his arm around a younger boy, both in threadbare clothes but grinning widely. Lucas, she realized, his foster brother before addiction had stolen his promise. Another frame held what must be the decent foster family he'd mentioned, an older couple with kind eyes flanking several children of different ages. Her heart constricted at these precious fragments of his past, carefully preserved in this sanctuary where no one would question their presence or their meaning. This was the real Tavian, the one beneath the wealth and the carefully constructed public persona, a boy who had survived abandonment by keeping small treasures of connection. As she turned to leave, her hip bumped the desk, sending the journal to the floor. Several loose papers scattered, including what appeared to be architectural renderings. Bending to collect them, Makeda froze as she recognized the distinctive design of Prism Gallery. With growing confusion, she examined the detailed plans showing an expansion of her gallery space, complete with a new wing bearing her name. Attached was a contract dated 2 months ago, before they'd said, "I love you," leasing the adjacent building at triple its market value. Cold disbelief washed through her. Had everything, their meeting at the auction, his pursuit of her, even their love, been calculated moves in some elaborate game? Was her gallery's success just another acquisition for a man who collected beautiful things? Her phone rang, Tavian's name lighting the screen. With shaking hands, she answered. "Hey, beautiful, I'm heading back. Any requests from civilization?" His voice was light, happy. "When were you going to tell me you bought the building next to my gallery?" The words came out sharper than intended, brittle with hurt. The silence that followed confirmed her fears. "Makeda, it's not what you think." "What I think," she said carefully, "is that you've been manipulating my career alongside my heart." Fears she'd thought conquered rushed back with sickening force. Was any of this real, Tavian? Or am I just another acquisition? "That's not fair," he said, voice tightening. "I was going to surprise you when the paperwork finalized. It's a gift, not manipulation." "A gift I never asked for." The papers crumpled in her grip. "This is exactly what Dominic did, making decisions about my career without consulting me, assuming he knew what was best." "Don't compare me to him." Tavian's voice had gone dangerously quiet. "Everything I've done has been for you, not for myself. That's the problem. You didn't do it with me." Tears threatened, but she held them back. "I need space to think. I'm going back." "We're on a private island, Makeda. At least wait until—" "Your staff can arrange it," she interrupted. "Please, Tavian, just give me this." Hours later, as the helicopter lifted from the island paradise that had briefly felt like home, Makeda watched Tavian's solitary figure on the beach below. The distance between them grew with each second, a physical manifestation of the doubts now clouding what had seemed so clear just hours before. Back in San Francisco, her apartment felt alien after just a week away, or perhaps she was the one who had changed. Everywhere she looked were reminders of Tavian, the painting he'd loaned her gallery, now adorning her wall, books they'd discussed on her shelves, his favorite teacup in her cabinet. Zuri arrived within an hour of her call, bringing wine and a shoulder to cry on. "Start from the beginning," she instructed, pouring generous glasses. Makeda explained everything, the island, the journal, the expansion plans, her fears. "Let me get this straight," Zuri said when she finished. "You're upset because your billionaire boyfriend, who clearly adores you, tried to give you the gallery expansion you've dreamed about for 3 years. Put that way, it sounded ridiculous." "It's the principle," Makeda insisted. "He made this huge decision affecting my career without consulting me." "Like you consulted him before accepting the New York residency next month?" Zuri challenged. Makeda blinked in surprise. "That's different. It's just a temporary teaching position. In another city for 6 weeks. Zuri sipped her wine, which you decided on and accepted before telling him. The parallel hadn't occurred to her. "I was going to tell him on the island," she admitted. "Seems you both have communication issues." Zuri's gentle tone softened the criticism. "But honey, there's a difference between poor communication and manipulation. Has Tavian ever tried to control you before this?" Makeda considered the question honestly. "No, he's always respected my independence. Even when we disagree, he listens. And this expansion, would it benefit him financially?" "No, it would be entirely under my control. The paperwork was clear about that." Zuri raised an eyebrow. "So he used his resources to help make your dream possible, retained no control, and planned to surprise you. That sounds less like manipulation and more like love. The simple observation pierced Makeda's defenses. Had she overreacted, projected old fears onto a man who had only ever shown her genuine care? Her phone buzzed. With a text from Tavian, "I'm back in the city. I understand you need space, and I'll respect that. But please know that everything I've ever done has been because I love who you are, not who I want you to be. When you're ready to talk, I'll be here." No demands, no defense, just honest vulnerability. So, different from Dominic's manipulative tactics when she'd discovered his betrayal. Sleep eluded her that night, memories washing over her in conflicting waves. Tavian playing piano in darkness, Tavian defending her at the gala, Tavian dancing, awkwardly in the rain because she asked. Tavian's expression when she'd first said, "I love you," wonder and joy and disbelief, as if receiving a gift he'd never expected. By morning, clarity had emerged from confusion. She'd allowed old wounds to color her perception, seeing betrayal where there was only imperfect love. Tavian had made a mistake in not discussing the expansion with her, but his intention had been to support her dreams, not control them. As dawn broke over the city, Makeda reached for her phone to call him, only to find a voicemail from an unfamiliar number. "Miss Sterling, this is Dr. Abernathy from San Francisco General. You're listed as emergency contact for Tavian Frost. There's been an accident." The world tilted beneath her feet as the doctor's words registered. Car accident. Surgery. Critical condition. In that moment of potential loss, all doubts and fears evaporated like morning mist. Nothing mattered. Not gallery expansions or miscommunications or past betrayals, except the man who had crashed into her life with an arrogant kiss and gradually revealed a heart capable of love so profound it had transformed them both. As she rushed toward the hospital, one thought crystallized with perfect clarity. She wasn't running to Tavian because she might lose him, but because she couldn't imagine life without him. Not just now, but ever. Chapter 10. Forever Surrender. Hospitals had always seemed to Makeda like liminal spaces, places suspended between life and death, joy and grief, beginnings and endings. Now, racing through sterile corridors with heart, hammering against her ribs, that liminality became unbearably personal. "I need to find Tavian Frost," she told the nurse at the emergency desk, voice steadier than she felt. "Dr. Abernathy called me." The nurse's expression softened with recognition. "The surgical waiting room, 3rd floor. Dr. Abernathy will meet you there." The elevator's ascent felt endless. How had she walked away from paradise over building plans and wounded pride? How had she allowed old fears to poison something so precious? Every moment apart now seemed like inexcusable waste. In the waiting room, she found not only the doctor, but an unexpected figure. Layla, Tavian's efficient assistant, her usual, crisp professionalism cracked by genuine worry. "Miss Sterling," Layla greeted, relief evident. "Thank God you came." "What happened?" Makeda asked, addressing both the assistant and the tired-looking doctor. "Mr. Frost was involved in a single-vehicle accident early this morning," Dr. Abernathy explained. "His car went off the coastal highway near Devil's Slide. A passing motorist saw the debris and called emergency services." "How bad is it?" Makeda's voice dropped to a whisper. "He has a concussion, 3 broken ribs, a fractured clavicle, and internal bleeding that required surgery," the doctor said with clinical precision. "The surgery was successful, but the next 24 hours are critical." "Was he—" Makeda couldn't bring herself to finish the question. "Alcohol wasn't a factor," Layla supplied gently. "The police believe he fell asleep at the wheel. He'd been driving all night, apparently." The implication wasn't lost on Makeda. After their argument, Tavian had flown back from Belize and immediately driven toward her, pushing himself beyond exhaustion. "Can I see him?" she asked, guilt and love creating a painful knot in her throat. "He's in recovery now. Once he's moved, To ICU, you can have brief visits. The doctor's pager beeped. Excuse me, the nurse will update you when he's ready for visitors. Alone with Layla, Makeda sank into a molded plastic chair, the adrenaline that had carried her here suddenly evaporating. He was coming to see you, Layla confirmed unnecessarily. He called me from the airport, asked me to gather all the paperwork about the gallery expansion. He said he'd made a mistake, that he needed to explain everything properly. Tears welled in Makeda's eyes. This is my fault. No, Layla said, firmly. Mr. Frost makes his own decisions, always has, but she hesitated, then continued with uncharacteristic openness. I've worked for him for 7 years. I've never seen him like this, willing to drop everything, to admit he was wrong, to fight for someone. You've changed him, Ms. Sterling. The words offered small comfort as minutes stretched to hours. Makeda alternated between pacing and sitting, between prayer and bargaining with whatever forces governed the universe. Calls came from Zuri, from her parents, from Flora, words spreading quickly through the networks of people who loved them both. Finally, a nurse appeared. You can see him now. 5 minutes only. The ICU room was dim and eerily quiet except for the rhythmic beeping of monitors. Tavian lay unnaturally still, his golden vitality dimmed by medical equipment and the harsh fluorescent glow. Bandages wrapped his torso. An IV snaked into his arm, and his skin held an alarming pallor that contracted painfully with his usual vibrant presence. Makeda approached slowly, afraid somehow that her presence might disturb the fragile balance-keeping. Him tethered to life. Gently she took his hand, the strong, capable hand that had held hers through gallery openings and family dinners, that had traced the contours of her body with reverent fascination, that had wiped away her tears when Flora was ill. I'm here, she whispered, throat tight with unshed tears. I'm not going anywhere, Tavian, not ever again. His fingers remained unresponsive in hers, but she continued speaking, pouring out everything in her heart, her fears, her regrets, her eternal gratitude that fate had brought him into her life that night at the auction. Most of all, she spoke of love, the kind that transcended misunderstandings and mistakes, the kind that had grown from hostility to fascination, to something so fundamental she could no longer imagine existence without it. When the nurse returned, to usher her out, Makeda pressed a gentle kiss to his forehead. Fight for us, she murmured against his skin, like you fought for everything that matters. The night passed in restless vigil, brief visits followed by agonizing waits in the sterile limbo of the waiting room. Dawn found her curled uncomfortably in a chair, awakened by Layla offering coffee and the news that Tavian's condition had stabilized overnight. The doctor says the worst has passed, Layla reported with cautious optimism. They're moving him to a private room this morning. Relief washed over Makeda in a dizzying wave. Thank you, she whispered, unsure if she was addressing Layla, the doctors, or some higher power that had heard her desperate pleas. By afternoon, Tavian had been transferred to a spacious private suite that quickly filled with flowers and cards, evidence of how many lives he'd touched despite his carefully maintained privacy. Makeda remained constantly at his side, speaking softly to him, even as he drifted in and out of drugged sleep, determined that his first fully conscious moment would find her there. That moment came as evening shadows lengthened across the room. His eyes opened slowly, confusion giving way to recognition as they focused on her face. Makeda, he rasped, voice rough from intubation during surgery. She leaned closer, tears spilling unchecked down her cheeks. I'm here. You're going to be okay. Awareness returned gradually to his expression. The car, I was coming to find you. I know, she whispered, gently squeezing his hand. I know everything, Tavian. The gallery expansion, the surprise you planned. I'm so sorry I doubted you that I ran. He shook his head slightly, wincing at the movement. No, you were right. I should have talked to you. I just wanted... He paused, gathering strength. I wanted to make you as happy as you've made me. The simple honesty of his words broke something open inside her, the last barrier of fear, the final defense against complete vulnerability. I love you, she said, the words holding new depths of meaning after nearly losing him. Not for what you can give me or do for me, but for who you are, stubborn, passionate, imperfect, and perfectly mine. His fingers tightened around hers with surprising strength. I had a lot of time to think on that island after you left, he murmured, about why I didn't just tell you about the expansion. I realized I still don't fully trust that I'm enough without my resources, my wealth. Part of me still believes I need grand gestures to be worthy of love. The admission, raw and honest, touched Makeda deeply. You've never needed anything but yourself to be worthy, she assured him. The boy who survived abandonment, who protected his foster brother, who built himself from nothing, that's who I fell in love with, the man beneath all the trappings. A ghost of his usual smile touched his lips. Even when that man burns dinner and makes decisions without consulting you. Especially then, she confirmed, carefully perching on the edge of his bed, because those imperfections make you real, not some fantasy prince from a fairy tale. Over the following days, Tavian's recovery progressed steadily, his natural vitality gradually returning. His hospital room became an unlikely gathering place. Flora bringing homemade soup, Makeda's parents stopping by with books, even Lucas visiting during a weekend pass from rehab, the brothers' reunion bringing tears to Makeda's eyes. Through it all, she barely left his side, working remotely from a corner of his room, sleeping in the recliner beside his bed despite his protests that she should rest properly at home. I'm exactly where I need to be, she insisted each time. And the softening of his expression told her he understood what remained unspoken, that she couldn't bear to be separated from him now, that nearly losing him had crystallized what truly mattered. 2 weeks after the accident, doctors finally cleared Tavian for discharge. As Makeda helped him pack the accumulated gifts and necessities, she broached the subject they'd been avoiding. The gallery in New York offered me a 6-week residency, she said quietly. I accepted it before our trip. That's part of why I reacted so strongly to the expansion plans. I felt hypocritical for keeping my own plans from you. Tavian considered this, no surprise registering in his expression. When do you leave? Don't, she said simply. I called them yesterday to decline. Makeda, no. He caught her hand, stopping her movements. You can't give up opportunities because of me. The residency is important for your career. So are you, she countered. After almost losing you, my priorities are crystal clear. There will be other residencies. His blue eyes held hers with characteristic intensity. What if there's a solution where you don't have to choose? What if I come with you to New York for those 6 weeks? The suggestion startled her. You'd do that? Leave your company, your life here? For 6 weeks with you? Without hesitation. His smile held certainty. I have properties in Manhattan. My company runs perfectly well with remote oversight. And after this, he gestured to his still bandaged torso, I have a new appreciation for not wasting a single day we could spend together. The easy solution to what she'd imagined as an impossible choice touched Makeda deeply. This was what true partnership looked like. Not grand gestures or perfect understanding, but the willingness to find paths forward together. That evening, settled in Tavian's penthouse, with its sweeping views of the city where their story had begun, Makeda curled carefully against his less injured side on the terrace lounger. Sunset painted the sky in colors reminiscent of their island paradise, a beauty made more precious by the knowledge of how quickly it could all disappear. "I've been thinking," Tavian said, his voice rumbling pleasantly under her ear pressed to his chest, "about us, about the future." "Dangerous territory," she teased gently. "Necessary territory," he corrected, shifting slightly to look into her eyes. "The accident clarified things for me too. Life is unpredictable, sometimes brutally so. The only certainty is what we choose. Who we choose, each day we're given." Something in his tone sent a flutter of anticipation through her chest. "What are you saying, Tavian?" Instead of answering directly, he reached into the pocket of his robe, withdrawing a small velvet box. The gleam deep blue in the fading light. "I had this with me on the island," he confessed. "I wasn't planning to ask yet. It seemed too soon, too much to hope for. But now, after everything—" He opened the box, revealing a stunning emerald set in vintage gold, the deep green stone glowing with inner fire. "Now I understand that when you find the person who makes life make sense, who challenges you to be better while loving your flaws, who sees the real you beneath all pretenses, you don't wait. You don't waste a single moment." Tears blurred Makeda's vision as Tavian continued, his voice deepening with emotion. "I don't care if it's too soon by anyone else's standards. I don't care what society columns will say, or what whispers will follow us. I know with absolute certainty that you are the love of my life, Makeda Sterling. The woman who slapped sense into an arrogant billionaire and then taught him what really matters." Despite his injuries, he shifted to face her fully, taking her hand in his. "Will you marry me? Not because I can give you the world, but because, together, we've created something better than either of us could find alone." The question hung between them, weighted with possibility. Makeda looked at this complex man she'd come to know so deeply, the public figure and the private soul, the successful businessman and the abandoned boy, the confident exterior and the vulnerable heart. In his eyes, she saw not just love, but an home, the place where she could be fully, authentically herself. "Yes," she whispered, then louder with growing certainty. "Yes, Tavian Frost. I will marry you, not for what you can give me, but for who we become together." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, their lips met in a kiss that held the promise of all kisses to come, through joy and sorrow, success and failure, health and illness. A commitment not just to passion, but to partnership, to building a life where both could flourish while remaining rooted in each other. Later, wrapped in his arms as stars emerged above the city, Makeda marveled at the journey that had brought them here, from antagonism to passion to this profound connection that defied simple categorization. "What are you thinking?" Tavian murmured against her hair, his breathing finally slowing towards sleep. Makeda smiled, tracing the outline of his jaw with gentle fingers. "I'm thinking how grateful I am that I slapped you that night, and that you had the audacity to kiss me anyway." His sleepy laugh rumbled through his chest. "Best decision I ever made." "Mine too," she whispered, watching his features soften as he drifted toward dreams. 6 months later, they married on the island that had seen both their paradise and their pain, the location transformed from a solitary retreat to a place of joyful gathering, under an arbor of tropical flowers, with ocean waves providing rhythmic accompaniment. They exchanged vows written from hearts that had learned the most valuable lesson, that true love isn't about perfection, but about choosing each other, day after day, through every storm and sunshine. As Tavian lifted her for their first kiss as husband and wife, Makeda felt the completion of the circle that had begun with that slap and stolen kiss. Anger transformed to passion. Passion deepened to love, and love elevated to the most profound partnership either had ever known. Their journey had never been about a billionaire's whim or a curator's surrender. It had always been about two souls, wounded, imperfect, and perfectly matched, discovering that the greatest masterpiece isn't found in galleries or collections, but in the art of loving someone completely, with every broken and beautiful piece of yourself.